Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the last responder. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So let's get right into it. What this character is going to be about is we are doing something rather similar to, if you have seen it, my Resource Hunter video. Where I was looking at a quad explosive railway rifle and was using that weapon in with free aim rather than VATS, which was a little bit of an interesting thing, just trying to see if the railway rifle, when it is not used in VATS and is automatic, can even be a useful weapon. And to my surprise, it was actually a very fun build and didn't really feel too hard to manage whatsoever. And yeah, in that video we were looking at a quad explosive railway rifle, and on this occasion we are looking at a quad explosive 10mm submachine gun. And yeah, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take basically another look at this build, just a little bit tweaked, and use a weapon that just fits it a little bit more, makes it easier to control. And yeah, the 10mm submachine gun has always been a special weapon for me. I quite like it and hate it in a similar way. The simple reason is, I explained this in a build I made using the 10mm submachine gun. It's solid in every single way, but fails to shine in a way. I hope that makes sense to you, but let me explain. It's similar to how I think about plasma rifles, for example. They are pretty good in VATS, they are pretty good in free aim, they do have pretty good damage output, but they can't be used in stealth. They do have relatively high VATS cost, so while you can definitely use them in VATS, you really have to invest quite a lot into them and have really dedicated legendary effects with less VATS cost and so on in order to really make use out of them in VATS. And if you're using them outside of VATS, yeah, these weapons tend to use a lot of ammo already, so that doesn't really get better by if you're using it outside of VATS, making them a bit less viable yet. And in addition to that, yeah, they're kind of hard to control. But yeah, this time around I was looking at the 10mm submachine gun, and just because, yeah, I do record this video on custom worlds. Reason being quite simple, I just didn't want to craft another 10,000 rounds of ammo on my actual character when I can just hop on here and do the trick. But yeah, the weapon I actually got in game, which was really cool. I really was kind of yeah, I was really surprised and happy to see a quad explosive version of this weapon. I'm pretty sure it's only been possible ever since a few patches back. Like it wasn't, quad wasn't a effect you could always get on this weapon. So yeah, that's kind of interesting, and it really makes this feel like a different weapon. Like, yeah, I mean, submachine gun doesn't have to do with a lot of ammo and so on, but it always felt a bit odd just having 25 or 30 bullets in the submachine gun. I don't know, it just feels more appropriate having this high magazine capacity. And yeah, for once I didn't really go for a VATS build here, but tried to use this outside of VATS yet again. And yeah, that means I put on some stabilized gear. There's not a whole lot you can do here. You mainly do lack the ability to give the weapon a proper scope or reflex sight. And it has a very terrible iron sight in my opinion. So all you can really do in order to help yourself with the recoil of the weapon is to equip a stabilized stock as well as a stabilized barrel. And to be more precise, on this occasion what we are using is a stub barrel. Now this is basically never a good decision, quite frankly. You pretty much always want to go for the long barrel options, just because they give you more range and basically have no real downside. I'm pretty sure you're getting a little bit more accuracy out of the short weapons, out of the short barrels, but in like 99% of the scenarios you can get into in this game, you're benefiting more from the range than the little bit of accuracy that you're gaining. So, yeah, the damage drop-off over range is quite harsh, and really reducing your range even further is rarely a good decision. Anyways, on this occasion I went through with it though for two main reasons. The first reason here is that, let me just see here, I don't, while the weapon is relatively well to control, I don't really find it useful over long ranges anyways. I did start with using long barrels. It's something I always do. I try to stick with stuff I know that works and just downgrade myself to a point where I say it still works for me. And yeah, I found myself, even if I had the longer barrels, not using this weapon at long ranges anyways, so I'm not losing out on too much here. And in addition to that, yeah, the main thing really is the looks of the weapon. Now, that ties back into what I was saying earlier when I said that I kind of love and hate this weapon at the same time, because I really dig this aesthetic. I can fondly remember using, how was it called, Sleepy Time in earlier Fallout game, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I always loved the design of the 10mm pistol and the 10mm submachine gun. Now, as you will probably know, in Fallout 4 there was no 10mm submachine gun, and I was really stoked to see it added back into this game, and I really like the aesthetic. However, the moment you want to modify this weapon into basically a more useful weapon, you kind of destroy the whole bulky look of it. I mean, only thing I can kind of compare it to, I mean, I'm not a gun guy at all, but I think it's this MP5 look, but the short version. Not sure if that's right, but you know what I'm talking about. This really compact looking, kind of small submachine gun. And yeah, if you just put on a long barrel and a good stock on this weapon, it just looks way too similar to all the other assault rifles in this game. That's my main problem, to be honest, and that's why I wanted to force myself into using it like this. And as I said, I found out that using it outside of VATS, excuse me, I really didn't, I never felt like I needed more range. That's pretty much all I want to say. And I do like having this kind of bulky, small submachine gun, especially since we're using it in power armor here. Which, by the way, is another thing I could mention real quickly, making this build a bit more unique, just because you rarely see commando builds in power armor. Reason being is quite straightforward. Power armor basically locks you out of stealth. Power armor stealth character on the way, by the way. A build I'm currently working on, but yeah, it's just not good. Anyways, yeah, it locks you out of stealth, and in addition to that, yeah, if you want to use VATS, power armor also not a good idea. Now you can get away with quite a few builds. I've done quite a few, but especially on commando class, VATS in power armor, you're just burning through fusion cores so fast that it's basically never worth it. And that being said, all of these downsides aren't there on this occasion. Like, we're not using VATS anyways, so fusion core drainage isn't the problem. We're having so easy time with fusion cores that in fact we can get away using the jetpack every now and then. Then the other big problem, stealth, is not a part of the equation either, for the simple reason that, yeah, the weapon doesn't have a suppressor, so if you want to use the 10mm submachine gun, chances are you don't want to use it on a stealth build anyways, and if that's the case, you might as well hop into some power armor and be just more tanky. That was my thought process here. Now, if I had to give you an overall downside to this build, it would definitely be ammo consumption. that's the big elephant in the room here. There's no way around it, no way to say it's not bad. It is a very resource-heavy build. You do need a lot of resources just to maintain and feed your weapon, but yeah, I think first and foremost you do have custom worlds nowadays, so if you just wanna hop on and have fun with this shit, yeah, just feel free to do so. And in addition to that, yeah, while you need a lot of resources, it's just something that holds me back oftentimes from making use out of weapons that do rely on a lot of ammo. But on the other side, it's not like ammo farming is particularly hard in this game. Like, if you really just have your main character, I think you can get away using pretty much every single weapon and farm the ammo for it. For me, it's always a little bit harsh just because I'm having to keep stock of so many different ammo types just for every single build, as you can probably imagine. And yeah, I rarely have the time to do resource runs, like running the Lucky Hole mine with excavator power armor and all that jazz. Yeah, I just kind of never find the time to do so, and that's basically the reason why I always stray away a little bit from these resource heavy builds. But as I said, if you're just having one or two characters that you want to maintain, this is definitely a viable build. I'm using a prime receiver for extra damage. On this weapon it's actually quite worth it in my opinion to prime it, and in addition to that you can be really effective when it comes to crafting your ammo. Like, I might be misremembering, it's been a bit, but on my main character I crafted around 10,000 rounds, which I needed, like, I'm pretty sure it was 14 flux for. I think it was either fluorescent or yellow cake. I think it's fluorescent though. Anyways, one of the more common ones, definitely. And also, yeah, the resources, the other resources became very little demanding. Like steel and gunpowder, not gunpowder, steel and lead weren't a big issue there. So overall, while you're consuming a lot of resources, it still is quite effective in my opinion. And it's a lot of fun. On the plus side here, we do have a good time to kill. We're not out DPSing a stealth VETS crit commando, obviously, but yeah, there's a ton of builds I would say are definitely weaker than this one. You do have a lot of DPS, just because, yeah, the prime receiver is pretty good. You do have, since we're not really keen on reload speed, we can go full on armor penetration when it comes to our modifications. Then we do have explosive, which is also obviously a nice boost against most enemies. And lastly, yeah, the sheer ammo capacity is great. Like, if you're fighting tougher enemies like Scorch Beast, you saw that earlier, you can just mag dump them, and that's a lot of fun always. I mean, my heart is bleeding a little bit every time I use so much ammo on a single enemy. But on the other side, if you just let it happen, you can really enjoy it. Now, one considerable thing here is the condition of the weapon. It's not the greatest in the world, but it definitely is okay. You can easily play for like an hour or two without having to repair it in most situations. I mean, and I'm talking about 1 or 2 hours of heavy fighting. So there's that. And as you can see, by the way, something I didn't really talk about is the weapon is really easy to control. I always find that whenever I use a weapon outside of VETS, it just takes me a few hours of gameplay to really adjust to it, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it becomes really easy. Now, I'm not often going for headshots just because, as you probably know, I'm not the best shot in the world. So I'm basically aiming at center mass, but still, we're bringing down enemies fast. The main difference you would see if you're reliably hitting the head would probably be that, yeah, we're just overall using less ammo, so that's definitely something to consider. And yeah, in addition to that, we do have a jetpack on this character. Now, we're not meant to jetpack forever. We're not particularly made to use the jetpack to full efficiency. It's just here for some occasional boosts and giving us overall just, I mean, it fits the static quite well, and overall it's just fun to have a jetpack, I guess. Now let's just see where this guy went, and yeah. As always, we're now at the point where I said that we have cleared this area here, and then it will take like 20 seconds and we find another guy, and there he shoots us. Yeah, on this occasion he hit in the ATV? Is it called an ATV? Sorry guys. Ah no, it's the 1370-220. That's how these things are called. Anyways, okay, another one, a level 100 legendary super mutant, and there's the level 61, and yeah. Where's the level 100 gun? Okay. Yeah, as you can see here, I mean, I was just running a full round here and didn't hear anything anymore, and now there's a full catalog of enemies back, and obviously the floaters have joined here, but they are not a big problem. Okay, so we were just able to outdamage the healing of the super mutant, but yeah, well, wasn't really enough. It would have been the better decision to just let him regenerate and then shoot him again. Sorry, by the way, that this whole video was being taken during the night. I hope you could see anyways, but let's be honest, you're not here on the channel for good quality videos or anything. In fact, I don't know why you're here at all. But anyways, this was the gameplay part of the video, when we're now going to take a look at our mutations and everything. So yeah, let's get right into it. First and foremost, here we have it, our mutations. We are in a hunting team, by the way, just because we are using taking one for the team. Gonna show that off later. So when it comes to mutations, there's a lot going on, but just so you know, there are a few that are not necessary here. And well, let's just start with them. Chameleon, Eagle Eyes, and Herbivore on this occasion, and also Unstable Isotope. Thing is, all of these mutations don't really bring us anything to this build. It was just that they didn't really have any considerable downside either, so I didn't really bother to remove them. Chameleon just flat out does nothing on this build. Eagle Eyes, same here. Extra crit damage and extra perception, we're not using any of them. The only thing is it's a downside to our strength, which ultimately just affects our carry weight. We're not relying on strength to boost our damage in any way, so really the only gameplay difference you will see is that we have a little bit less carry weight than we would have otherwise, and so I didn't really bother to remove it. And then we do have Herbivore. Also, yeah, just we're not using any buffs anyway, so if you want to use certain vegetarian food buffs, it could be useful. I mean, on this occasion I could see an argument for AP for buffs that help you refresh your action points faster, just so you can fly around with your jetpack a little bit more, but that's basically everything. And lastly, Unstable Isotope, which just we have a chance to have this little mushroom cloud around us when we're attacked in melee, and yeah, doesn't do anything. It's also not really fitting the character in my opinion on this occasion, but I'm not even sure we've seen it go off, and yeah, you know, didn't really do anything here. What's a bit more interesting, however, is Speed Demon down there. Extra reload speed, which isn't the most important thing here just because of our big clip size and the generally relatively fast reload speed of the weapon itself, but certainly doesn't hurt to have a little bit more reload speed, and more movement speed is always nice. So there's that. Then we have Marsupial, better jump height and better carry weight. The carry weight, I mean, it's the carry weight, so who gives a crap, but more jump height, that's always nice to have. Syncs in very well with the jetpack, just because, yeah, you're jumping in the air, and if you reach your peak, you then just start to use the jetpack, giving you ultimately a little bit more out of the jetpack, basically. Then we do have Healing Factor, which I find quite nice on this character. I tend to not use chems here, so the debuff doesn't really affect me. I mean, using stim packs every now and then, but overall we are relatively tanky. And you saw there during the video, there wasn't a single situation where I thought I was in terrible danger. And yeah, having health regen outside of combat is quite nice. I mean, we're pretty much ending every single encounter with like 80-70% health or even less. So yeah, having automatic regeneration of that lost health is nice to have, while not necessary. And lastly, that leaves us with bird bones, and it's not as important as it sometimes is, just because the agility we're getting here basically only helps us use our jetpack a bit more efficient, but still, it's nice to have. And yeah, then we do have reduced fall speed, so if you can pull it in, I always like to use bird bones on power armor characters, just because you're not getting into this power armor landing animation all that often, which really makes it a lot more fluent. It's just a convenience thing, to be honest. That being said, let's get over to our equipment, and here it is, the elusive quad explosive 10mm submachine gun. Now, we do have a third effect here. As you can see, your VETS critical meter fills 15% faster. Certainly not a bad effect, could be quite interesting here, but to be honest, yeah, I made a VETS build with a 10mm submachine gun, and if I want to go down that route, we're really not getting the most benefit out of quad. Just because, yeah, even I mean, for me at least, the only way I could make this build viable, it was a lot of fun and really viable in my opinion, but it was more like using quick bursts in VETS and really regenerate AP very fast in order to then re-enter VETS. So having to reload while you're refreshing your AP wasn't a big problem. So yeah, in general, ammo capacity wasn't a problem on that build. You'd rather want to maximize your damage with the few shots you get. So yeah, would have been a little bit lost on this quad explosive version to use it in VETS in my opinion. So obviously what could have been nice here, faster reload, reduced weight, the typical stuff, but honestly there's nothing we could terribly need. I really think this weapon, if you have a 2-star version of it, won't be way worse than any 3-star could be. That's all I'm saying. Then, as I said, in terms of modification, we do have a prime receiver, so we're ending up with 90 damage. Then we do have a stabilized stop barrel and a stabilized stock. I would have loved if the stock wasn't necessary here, but really having the stabilized stuff felt kind of important, made the weapon way better for the way we're using it at least. And as I already said, we do have the perforating magazine. Now, there would be an option to go for the piercing magazine, I think it is, which would improve your armor penetration as well as your reload speed, but both of them not terribly. So I rather went for all of the armor penetration I could get here, together with tank killer. That's quite a considerable amount. I'm not quite sure from the top of my head how much the perforating magazine does. I just know that once I read it, and I was surprised. It is actually pretty much armor penetration. I mean, don't quote me on that, but something like 25% or so. So really, it is significant. And yeah, that's basically it about the weapon. You could obviously get a bit more condition if you're finding that to be a terrible thing, by not using the stabilized stop barrel, but a forceful, I think it is. But yet again, to the expense of not having the optimum when it comes to stabilization. So that's probably just something you have to find out for yourself, the exact combination of modifications here. But yeah, as a side note, I think at least yeah, investing a little bit into making your weapon recoil more controllable is a nice thing here. When it comes to our armor, we do have a full set of ultrasight armor. It's actually not legendary at all. We do have calibrated shocks on our legs. We have the data-based modification on our helmet just to increase our intelligence a little bit. Nothing we desperately need here. And then we do have our ultrasight torso with the jetpack. And lastly, we do have optimized bracers on one of our arms. It's a leftover, just not useful, but when it comes to the arms, there's not a single modification that could be useful to us. Obviously, legendary armor would be great here. Since I am on a custom world, I could have just crafted some of it. But to be honest, there's nothing we desperately need here. As always, AP refresh would be nice. Overeaters could be interesting here, just to make us more tanky. But other than that, I think there's nothing we could have terribly needed here, or that could have given us a terrible advantage. So ultimately, yeah, as you saw, not necessary to go for a legendary set, making this thing here easier to recreate. And yeah, that's it when it comes to our equipment, and let's move on to the perks. So we do have 5 strength here, which we use for traveling pharmacy and bandolier. Pretty straightforward. I mean, bandolier is something I would actually really advise you to use. 10mm and ultrasight 10mm ammo isn't the most heavy kind of ammo, but you want to carry a considerable amount of it, and therefore, yeah, having its weight reduced isn't a bad thing at all. Also, we don't have a terrible high strength. I mean, it could be a little bit better just because we have some unnecessary debuffs from mutations, but ultimately, I think you get the point here. And traveling pharmacy. Now, it's not like I previously said we're not relying on camps too much, and therefore I went through with the healing factor mutation, but on the same note, I feel like if I have a character, especially when that's not terribly invested into stim packs and so on, yeah, I just really rely on traveling pharmacy or the chemist's backpack. I always tend to carry way too much stim packs with me. It's just a convenience thing here. Maybe not necessary for you, but you know that, right? Like, if you feel like you can live without traveling pharmacy, no point to discuss this. Just leave it out and not boost your strength so much. You will see, as every so often, we do have quite a few perk points from legendary perks, so yeah. Anyways. Then we move on to perception, where it gets a little bit more interesting. We do have, obviously, the commando perks maxed out. We do not have any legendary effect on our weapon, talking about primary effects here, that boosts our damage, so directly at least. So yeah, maxing out our damage is a good option here. Obviously, we do get a good buff from the explosive effect, but still, yeah, boosting the power was definitely the right decision here. And then we do have Grenadier. Now, sorry. Firstly, we talk about Tank Killer. Syncs in very well with the perforating magazine I mentioned earlier, just giving us more armor penetration. And on this occasion, I actually found that the 9% chance to stagger an enemy was also quite useful, keeping enemies at bay a little bit, and especially tougher targets, Yaogwai or something like that. Keeping them at the range easier, that's a nice thing to have. I mean, we do get a lot of shots in very short time, so you do have a good chance to actually stagger them. And yeah, that's it. More damage and a staggered chance. And then we talk about Grenadier here. Thing is, there was nothing else we needed. Like, I was running when I was starting this build with Ground Pounder. Thing is though, it really isn't too beneficial on this character here. I mean, the hipfire accuracy would be nice from Ground Pounder, but yeah, as you saw during the video, I really tried to use this with aiming down sights, because while going all in on hipfire accuracy makes the weapon really accurate, it also means that you have quite terrible recoil. So while the first 2 shots maybe really are very precise, it's kind of hard to control the weapon. So I ultimately found using the weapon aiming down sights easier and more beneficial, especially once I specialized in it. So yeah, Ground Pounder not too useful. Obviously, you could argue that the faster reload speed would have been beneficial here, but to be honest, as I mentioned earlier, just the high ammo capacity means that, yeah, we're reloading relatively rarely during combat, at least. I mean, you always have time for tactical reloads here and there, but it's pretty rare that during a combat situation you have to reload, and even then, yeah, the weapon doesn't reload too long. Grenadier, now it does, as far as I'm concerned or aware, not affect the radius of our explosive legendary effect, sadly. Pretty sure I tried it the moment the Grenadier perk was changed a little bit, or buffed to be more precise. Yeah, the explosive legendary effect on weapons isn't buffed by this, I'm pretty sure at least. But we will see in a second that, yeah, I do have far-flung fireworks, and since we are on custom worlds and I could scrap all of my excess perks, I actually have far-flung fireworks at more than rank 1 for once. It's rank 3, so it's still not a good perk in my opinion, but at least with Grenadier I'm pretty sure it's affecting far-flung fireworks and making it actually a little bit useful, especially if you're fighting hordes of ghouls or so. Then we go on to endurance. Now it's pretty low, especially since we are a really upfront and personal fighter, always in danger, but I just found that, yeah, having the ultraside power armor makes us tanky enough. Pretty simple, to be honest. I didn't really feel like I needed more. I have fireproof here just because, yeah, we're obviously wielding an explosive weapon, so we could damage ourselves quite easily without it. And in addition to that, it's never a bad decision to use it. It's really one of my most utilized perks, I guess. Then we do have Charisma with a combination that for a long time I pretty much always used, and I think for the last 2 or 3 months I rarely used it, and now it's back again. Tenderizer and Lone Wanderer here. So Tenderizer giving us a 10% multiplicative damage boost on this occasion after our first hit. Pretty nice. Obviously we're killing pretty much every single enemy with more than one hit, so we pretty much always see a benefit from this perk. And Lone Wanderer might have 20% damage reduction, it might not have, but I really just relatively recently read that it supposedly never worked, the damage reduction part of the perk. It sounded pretty convincing. On the other side, I never heard anyone else talk about it, so meh. Maybe it doesn't work, but honestly the main thing here is the AP regen, and that definitely works here. It always seems like it's not as potent as 30% faster AP refresh, but it still is good. So yeah, overall, bit faster AP refresh, nice for our jetpack usage, and maybe a bit more damage reduction, but who knows. Then we go on to intelligence. We are quite intelligent on this occasion. Now we do have a pretty hefty debuff from the marsupial mutation, but still should leave us with something like 9 intelligence. Thing is, we use it for Demo Expert to just ever so slightly boost our damage with the weapon, just because we're utilizing the legendary effect, explosive bullets. And that also means, by the way, that you can just throw some grenades every now and then. I just always forget to use them during videos, and therefore I just don't bother bringing them anymore. And then we do have Gunsmith. I really would advise you to use it here. I mean, I said that the condition of the weapon isn't too terrible, but without Gunsmith it's quite terrible. Yeah, that's basically it. And then on this occasion here I was torn between using Power User or batteries included. The thing is, overall we're not using too many fusion cores. It really depends on how much you're utilizing your jetpack. However, if you're not having the Power User perk, you can really just look at your fusion core drainage during a flight. It really, yeah, 3 or 4 full flights can actually consume a full fusion core if you're not using Power User. So maybe there's an argument to not use Power User but batteries included to just carry more fusion cores, which would probably be the way I would use it if I would use it for just a few days or so, having fun with the build. But yeah, I went through with Power User, meaning that oftentimes, I mean, if you're seeing that your fusion core is near done and you don't really have a good backup supply of fusion cores, then just stop using the jetpack for a while, and sooner or later you will be shot by an enemy with energy weapons and your fusion core will be recharged. But anyways, long story short, making it easier for us to use the jetpack Power User here. Then we go on to agility. This is our highest stat here. pretty rare occasion, by the way, now that I'm thinking about it, that we don't have at least 2 stats maxed out. So yeah, pretty rare. Anyways, we do have Action Girl just to further improve our AP refresh, making it easier to use our jetpack yet again. Then we do have rank 1 of Born Survivor. Just a little bit of a backup here in case I don't really want to look at my, or I often forget to look at my health bar during fights, and this makes it so I don't really have to. And then we do have White Knight, which is completely out of place here. Talking about it in a second. We do have Adrenaline here at rank 5, pretty obvious, damage boost in a lot of situations when we're fighting multiple enemies. Another one of those perks that I really often use, just because it's, yeah, I mean it's a lot of perk investment, but agility is just always a good idea to boost. Its passive effect are pretty numerous. Pretty much every single build can benefit from some extra action points, and so Adrenaline is basically never wasted unless you have something like a gunslinger build where you really have to take care of which perks you pick for your agility stat. Other than that, yeah, Adrenaline is pretty much always a good decision just for extra damage when you're killing multiple enemies. Then we do have Dodgy. Now, Dodgy works relatively well on this character in my opinion, because during fights I rarely use the jetpack, or at least I rarely rely on it. So pretty much during fights I'm not really utilizing my action points for anything, and using Dodgy makes good use out of those. So we're getting way more tanky at the cost of fusion core drainage and action points. It's a trade-off quite worth it for me, but that's something you have to decide for yourself. I found it quite good. And yeah, as I just said, White Knight wasn't supposed to be there. I kind of have overlooked it. It doesn't work with power armor. It only works with standard armor. I'm not quite sure from the top of my head what I used it for here. I just scrapped all of my perk cards just before the video, so probably I would have just guessed what I had there earlier just from seeing the perk cards down below. But yeah, let's just suppose that this didn't happen, and yeah, I'm pretty sure you could think of any perk that would be beneficial here. I can't for the moment, but yeah, just fill in the gap. Sorry. And then lastly, we do have 8 luck. We do have Bloody Mess here, just to give us ever so slightly a damage buff. Won't be the world. We're probably talking about something like 6 to 7 damage, but still, it's a little bit more, and enemies can explode into some gory paste. One thing, I mean, I don't always want to mention this when I'm using Bloody Mess, because that happens relatively often, but yeah, how is it called, like trypophobia or so? Like people that have like a phobia of reoccurring patterns, like beehives or such. Anyways, if you have this kind of sickness or phobia, I'm pretty sure you know that I'm talking to you at this moment. Stay away from red toads. I don't have this phobia at all, but killing red toads with Bloody Mess can lead to some seriously disgusting looks, just because the eggs on their backs pop out, and it leaves some horrible, like bloody, gory holes in their backs and torsos. And I mean, it's disgusting to look at, even in this graphic, and even if I'm not having this phobia. So I can imagine if you have this kind of illness, yeah, don't use Bloody Mess here. You will survive without it. Then we do have Tormentor, which just gives us a bit of an extra chance to stagger enemies. Now, as you can read the description here, you do have a 50% chance to crippling a limb on an enemy. The thing is though, if you're crippling a limb, usually an enemy will be staggered. That's just a side effect of crippling a limb. At least on most enemies. I'm not sure, there might be some that where it doesn't work like that. This, by the way, is if you've ever seen a ghoul with crippled legs lying on the floor, or Myler Queen or anything that's just immobilized because its legs are crippled. if you shoot them and cripple another limb, they will just appear to stand up for a short period of time and then immediately go back into their animation. Yeah, that's basically because, yeah, if you're crippling a limb, they are staggered, but there's no stagger animation for enemies that lie on the floor. At least that's how I understood it. Anyways, Tormentor here. There's not a lot we could use here in luck, just because we're not utilizing bats, and therefore I thought might as well go for Tormentor for once. Also helps, especially if you're fighting tougher enemies, because while you do have relatively good time to kill, it really helps if you immobilize your enemies just to keep a little bit of range between you, and once an enemy is on the floor, it makes it way easier to target their head. Easy as that. And lastly, we do have Starch Genes here. As always, want to keep our mutations, not get any new ones, so that was kind of an obvious one. And that leaves us with only our legendary perks, so the boring ones out of the way. We do have Strength, Agility and Luck boosted here. Now Strength and Luck both give us extra perk points to use, and legendary Agility, I think we do have 14 base Agility, so yeah, we use one of these points in Agility to max out our stat, and one more point that basically just increases our action points a little bit. And that leaves us with Electric Absorption, which is never a bad pick if you're having a power armor character, just because it makes you so much more tanky in a lot of situations. As soon as energy damage is involved, you're basically, well, not immortal. Against some weapons you pretty much are, flamers, Gatling lasers and so on, but yeah, you do get a considerate amount of healing going on in addition to recharging your fusion cores. Most of the times I'm basically just using this for the healing. On this occasion though, I actually found that, yeah, recharging my fusion cores was a nice bonus. Yeah. Then we do have Far-Flung Fireworks, so if we kill an enemy with a ranged weapon, we have a 16% chance that it explodes. So, yeah, 16%, it's not a high chance, but every now and then it happens, and if it does, it's fun. And yeah, at least I feel like with Grenadier it's actually a perk worth considering, because, yeah, if an enemy explodes, it oftentimes does damage other enemies nearby. And lastly, we do have taking one for the team. Obviously, this would have priority to max out, in my opinion. Taking 20 enemies take 20% more damage when they attack you if you're on a team. Yeah, this is a multiplicative bonus, meaning it's very good. Yeah, it's one of the best, probably the most important perk on this build, or at least the one that gives you the most damage, if it is affecting you. But you're not in stealth, you're pretty loud and proud, so you're often attacked, and since we are a relatively close range enemy, by the time we are starting to attack an enemy, usually the enemy attacks us as well. So yeah, very good perk here. As you saw there, we were on a hunting team all by ourselves, but yeah, the taking one for the team perk should still work. And yeah, that was it. I hope you enjoyed the build, guys. I have a very special one coming up that I'm really hyped about. I just have to make some last minute changes, and yeah, I was basically working on a throwables, not throwables only build. I do have a backup weapon, but yeah, for the most part, we're really trying to only use tomahawks, most precisely, and it was surprisingly fun and good, actually. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be the next build, but either the next or the one after that. Anyways, guys, see ya. Bye.